Alright, everybody, we're back for my final call video. And yes, there has been some changes. The election is in 3 days. 3 days, that's just amazing that we're finally coming to the end of this. No more text messages, ads, phone calls, no more people asking you for money for their candidate. As I'm recording this, I have it cropped out, but I've got ads floating all around. And it's just crazy. But we're almost done. But I have some changes that have been made to this map. Some movings from leans to likelies, likelies to leans, leans to tilts, believe it or not, after some breaking news that came out tonight. So I am looking forward to doing this with you. So as always in this final map, for the 2024 election, you got Harris, you got Trump. It's time to go through the states, as I always start with, because they're the ones that matter the most. We're going to start with the safe states. These are states that we know what they're going to go on election night. We know how they're going to go. We know what's going to happen. They're going to get called very shortly after polls close. So let's do that. We have Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and D.C. Those are all states that will go to Kamala Harris. Then we have Vermont. We have Illinois. We have Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, New York, Maine statewide, Maine Congressional District 1, all safe for Kamala Harris. She starts off with 183 electoral votes. Safe for the Republicans, we have West Virginia, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri. We have North Dakota, South Dakota. We have Nebraska whole. Nebraska's 1st and 2nd congressional district. We're looking at the 3rd congressional district, or the 3rd district in the state that we'll be discussing. I'm not entirely certain which district is actually there, but one of those districts we're looking at in Nebraska is not safe. Kansas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Also Utah, my bad. Those are all safe states for the Republicans. Safe states. These are states that are not going to go for Harris. They are guaranteed to go for Trump. Trump starts off with a base of 122, as would any other Republican running for the presidency. Now we're going to move over to the likely column. The likely column for the Democrats. What states are likely going to go to Kamala Harris? Those states would be Colorado and New Mexico. Colorado and New Mexico. Those are states that have last went Republican, or was, I believe, George W. Bush. Romney and McCain thought maybe they could hold them. Romney thought he could win them. Did not happen. Has not happened. They've moved more and more to the left. Again, they're likely going to go to Harris. It puts her at 198. Likely states for the Republicans. Likely states for the Republicans. We're going to have Ohio. And that's it. It is not a lot of likely here for the Republicans, but likely Ohio. Again, you're noticing a change. I did not shade in a state. We were going to get to that and why shortly. Now let's get to the leans. We got a lot of leans here. States that are leaning Democrat. New Hampshire. Virginia. Yes, I've moved those. I believe I had them likely before. I moved them to lean. And I moved them to lean because there's been a couple of polls that have shown it narrowed. Over the recent days, though, they have been moving squarely more into her column. But for the sake of hopeful accuracy, I'm putting those to leans. Again, I think you can make the argument for likely, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to go ahead and put them in the lean category. Minnesota, lean. Again, I believe she's going to win that state. But because, again, it's closer election than normal, I'm going to put that in the lean category. Next, let's go to the great state of Florida. Florida is, that's all for the, that's my mistake there. Did not mean to select Florida there for that. Let's go to the Republicans, because that's all the leans for the Democrats. Leans for the Republicans is Florida. That was a mistake on my part. Florida is lean Republican. Again, there's going to be a lot of Republican leans here, or it's going to bring them well and close to the moving them a little bit up in the standings there for electoral votes. Alaska is lean. Texas is lean. And those are the big ones right there, right? You got Florida, you got Texas, and Alaska. That's 73 electoral votes combined. That brings Trump up to 212. Let's not forget here, Maine's 2nd congressional district. I put that as lean, and that almost makes me forget. Nebraska's their 3rd congressional district, or their other district, that is how they decide their votes, also lean Democratic, which brings us 226 to 213. Again, 13 electoral vote difference there. And yes, there is a new state in the battlegrounds. New state in the battlegrounds. That is Iowa. And you're probably like, why in the world is Iowa shifted from likely Republican to a battleground? And it's because the Ann Stelter poll came out this afternoon, and that is massive. Has Harris up by 3 points. Her poll was off by 1. Her poll was off by 1 in 2020. She has her finger on the heartbeat of that state. She knows what she's doing. I can't imagine she'll be too off. Is that an outlier? It is an outlier poll compared to others. But could she be right? That would be a huge pickup. The Democrats have not campaigned in Iowa. They haven't. I don't think Harris has held a rally in Iowa. But could Iowa flip? Again, states flip without people thinking they're in play, and until you get a poll or something reliable that says otherwise, you don't pay attention to it. Ohio is a swing state, and look where it's at now. It's likely to be a Republican state. And same with Florida. That used to be a battleground. It's not so much a battleground now. It leans Republican. This is crazy, right? That poll is crazy. That came out with a Harris 3-point lead. And again, women are driving the train for Harris, and they're driving the number that we got here in Iowa. But we'll get to Iowa. Now we're on to the tilts. You know how I like to do this when we're talking about the tilts. Again, my goal here is to run through these states. I don't want to keep everybody long because I know you want to get to. But we're going to talk about each of these states. I try to keep these videos to around 30 minutes. I might keep it less tonight, but we're going to head over to the state of Nevada. A few polls have come out. Atlas Intel has been one that's really been flooding the zone with polls. Seems to be conducted almost every day. The complete swing of their polling has been so bizarre that I've elected to ignore their results. They were again outliers, and they're not rated in 538's top 25. But again, when a pollster floods the zone like that, I become skeptical of their results. And Atlas Intel has done that exact thing. Nevada's close. For sure, it's very close. There have been some developments in my mind over the last, honestly, week that, as my mind has put Nevada into an interesting area. The MSG rally in New York that Donald Trump had, which was a huge event for any candidate to hold a rally at MSG and pack it out like he did, is exceptional. But there were some comments made that were very offensive to the Latino community, and Nevada has a heavy Latino base. In a state that's margins, right? We've talked about this in all of these states when we went through them county by county, all the battlegrounds, and except Iowa, because at the time Iowa wasn't really a conversation. But in Nevada, it's part of, it's Clark County and Washoe County. And I said before, if Trump can flip Washoe, he'll win the state. But again, we're talking the margins. We're talking the state's going to be very close. If in fact Kamala Harris wins the state, and it's close, again by 10,000 votes, did those comments at MSG matter? Polling shows it close. 538, I believe, average has Nevada +1. A lot of that's due to that Atlas Intel flooding the zone with some very large Trump leads. I cannot imagine any candidate winning by, I think, 6 or 7 was the polling average. Again, they've been all over the board with this polling cycle. They were the most accurate in 2020. I don't expect that to be the case this time. Nevada, because of those comments, because of what's going on, I'm going to have to put this in the tilt Democratic column. I had moved Nevada into the Republican column before this video. Honestly, it was last week, a little bit before last week, I had moved them to the Republican side because I saw the shift. However, I do believe those comments will have an impact in that state. A state that's as close polling has been the whole cycle. I can't imagine it's 6-7 points all of a sudden now. Nothing has happened to make that drastic of a shift. And it'll be close. But I think Harris wins this state. I think she holds Washoe County, runs it up in Clark County, and gets that done. I left Arizona as one of the battlegrounds. But the more I think about it, and some of this is being decided on the fly, the polling has just been so good for Trump in this state. I've seen next to no polling data that says otherwise. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'm shifting Arizona out of the tilt column, away from the battlegrounds, and I'm moving them to lean. So I'm not going to go into much here other than just, again, the state, the Arizona Senate race is very close. Again, could polling be wrong in this state and Kari Lake hurts them down, up? The reverse coattails is a negative effect on Trump, sure. But consistently, former President Trump has done really well in Arizona in the polls. He's got over a 2.5, I think, point lead in Arizona, according to RCP and 538. They're all having him up very high. In this moment, I'm moving out of the lean. And this was a debate, honestly, in my mind, up till really just now, where I shifted them out. Even as you saw, I had them as the battlegrounds. But I think the right thing to do here is to shift that. So that is a shift in Trump's favor. We've had two huge shifts. Iowa away as likely. I believe I had them as likely Republican. I have shifted them down from likely to battleground because of the weight of the Seltzer poll, and it matters. So let's get to Iowa. Iowa's polling averages have been very strong for Trump. +6, I believe, was the average in the state of Iowa. So that question becomes, is that Seltzer poll off by 9 points? Ann Seltzer is widely known as having her finger on the heartbeat of Iowa. She is the poll that every candidate looks for in the caucus time. She is the pollster that people like myself and other political scientists looked for at the end of the cycle. She had Biden down by 7 in 2020. Had Biden down by 7 in 2020. She was off by a point in 2020. Pollsters care about their reputation, right? When you flood the zone, you do all that kind of stuff, and you're like, oh, well, one of these polls were right. It's whatever. Your rating will take a hit on that. But there are a lot of pollsters that value their reputation, and Seltzer is one. She's widely known as one of those people who just always wants to be accurate. And I think that's important to point out here, that matters. That really does matter. That being said, do I think Harris wins Iowa? Again, it's possible, but I'm going to have to throw this into the tilt Trump column. What does that mean? He still wins the state. It's just going to be a heck of a lot closer than anyone really thinks it's going to be. And I want to say one thing about Iowa. If Harris wins Iowa, it is going to be an early night. It is going to be an early night for the Trump campaign. There is no path. There is no path in my mind, anyway, with how the polls look, how the reality is looking, that Trump can win the White House without Iowa. If Harris flips Iowa, again, what's so bizarre is if Harris flips Iowa and Trump wins in Nevada, that is a net 0 for both candidates. But Trump needs both more than Harris needs both or one. Harris can win without either of those states. If Harris holds Nevada, flips Iowa, that path, that Trump path that we talk about through the southern states becomes impossible. There's no way Trump can win through the Sun Belt if he doesn't hold Iowa. And again, that Sun Belt would have to include Nevada, right? You have to include Nevada there, and he has to pick off a Rust Belt state. Trump's paths are very small, but again, they're there, and they are there. Next, let's go to Georgia. There's a lot of data coming out of Georgia on the early vote. Again, it's high turnout. That's big. A lot of women are voting. Women disproportionately right now are voting for Kamala Harris. And then there's this question of, and I wanted to get to this, and I think now when we get to these two southern states, and Georgia and North Carolina, I want to talk about, because a lot of the crosstabs, and I want to thank a former professor of mine, Dr. Higgins, about this, as he has been sharing some interesting data. Women have disproportionately been voting in North Carolina. and women disproportionately support Kamala Harris. Again, that's according to the polls. The question is, are we going to get the shy Harris voter, where they're scared to say they support Harris, and women who are married to Trump supporters are scared to say they support Harris. But when they go into the voting booth where it's private, they circle her name anyway. There was an ad about this that started to make me think about that's possible, and it wouldn't shock me. And you know it's possible when people like Charlie Kirk are talking about it and freaking out about it, and people like Trump are talking. These people on the far right are talking about it, so you know it's possible, and it's something we have to consider. It's hard to look at it, but the numbers in Georgia, again, show that the polling averages, again, within the margin of error, could be, again, they've also been pretty strong for Trump, not nearly as strong as Arizona. But they're there. And again, Georgia could go for Harris on election night. But right now, the data just is so positive for Trump in Georgia that for now, I have to leave it in the tilt Republican column. Tilt. Well, for my final call, it's tilt. Tilt Republican. I'm calling. I believe Trump's going to win the state of Georgia. That's a pickup from him. He lost it in the 2020. Now let's move up to my home state of North Carolina. I love talking about my home state, as everybody knows, because it's a battleground, and I view it as a tipping point state. Mark Robinson's on the ballot here. He is polling very poorly, some cases even so bad as barely cracking 30%. Do I think that's the number he gets? Probably not. We're probably looking at somewhere in the high 30s that he'll be polling at. And he's poison pill on the ballot. So does this drive turnout down? Does the hurricane that went through the western part of the state affect turnout up there? So far, it doesn't seem so. Very high turnout so far. Over half of the people, I believe, in the state of North Carolina who have voted. And that's awesome. Great participation. I myself have also voted. I early voted, and so have a lot of people in the state of North Carolina. Today was the last day to actually early vote, and it's just awesome to see so much participation in my home state. But again, the crosstabs here are very promising for Harris. Again, what I've seen is the numbers of actual votes correlating with certain polls, and what the polls are saying, even some with maybe a Trump lead, are actually showing with the demographics who have voted, with the independents who have voted, the Democrats who have voted, and maybe some Haley voters in North Carolina who have not gone from Haley to Trump but went from Haley to Harris. The data might be showing that in fact, North Carolina could go blue. And I'm going to make a bold prediction here, and this can come back to bite me again. I could be wrong about all of these, and I'm more than happy to admit it. And I will do a video showing where I was wrong. And if the polls and the numbers are just so wildly off, we'll talk about it. And it's just going to show that there needs to be a true adjustment here. Again, what do I think happens here? Again, I'm gonna do something that I'm gonna get a lot of hate from all of the Trump world out there, but I'm gonna say this is a tilt Harris state. Tilt Harris in North Carolina. That brings her up to 248 to 246. Both of them have won 22 electoral college votes of the tilts. So far, even Steven in the state for the tilt column. So far, North Carolina and Nevada for Harris, Iowa and Georgia for Donald Trump. So let's move up to the real meat of these states. I want to start with Wisconsin. The polls have been very close in Wisconsin, but the last two cycles the polls have been wildly off in Wisconsin. It is the most white state of the three battlegrounds, which means the population is more Caucasian than it is minority, and Trump does very well with that. However, Harris has been polling better with Caucasian voters, where there have been some losses in the African American community and the Hispanic community. There has been some pickups in the more white-centered areas of the country. And if that's the case, again, if you're choosing to have a that's a swap that the Democrats are going to take. But can we honestly say that Wisconsin? We don't know. The polls have been bad here. Are they still bad? Are they overestimating Trump now? Are they underestimating? I don't know. I can't go into that. All I can say is, since Harris took over, Harris has been leading in the state for the most part. There was a point where, again, Republicans flooded the zone with the polling, and that was a concern that I had coming in here, is that we're going to have a lot of people see, oh, but we're winning, what happened, if they're on the Trump side, and then they lose. They're like, what the poll said. Again, you have to see who the pollster is. That matters a great deal, which is why, again, Ann Seltzer matters, right? That is a highly reputable pollster. However, for the state of Wisconsin, it's so hard to make this. It's a hard state to make a call, and I'm still, I'm still struggling with it just looking at it. But again, just the overall history of the state, the trends of the state, the fact that it's only gone red once, it's always close. I expect it close again. However, once again, I have to say it's as a hold for the Democrat. The blue wall remains intact for now. Remains intact. Moving on to the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan. This state, popular current governor, Gretchen Whitmer. She's not on the ballot for this time. She's a big supporter of Kamala Harris. This state has been very blue in the past. The polls are expressing as such. There's a 1-point lead, I believe, at the averages in the state of Michigan. Most of the popular pollsters are showing as such. Harris has gotten some good numbers. Marist, again, was a pollster I didn't mention in Wisconsin. Marist had her up by 3, as in Michigan, had her up by 3. Again, I do believe the state's going to go to Kamala Harris. I don't believe the data indicates this is a Trump victory here. This is a state that we also could get an answer for on election night. The Secretary of State believes that that'll be the case, so we could know early whether this is going to be a long night or an early night for Kamala Harris. And as you can see, Harris will become the next president of the United States, shattering the glass ceiling. This has been very consistent in my predictions. All of my maps, I have had Kamala Harris winning. The data in my mind has shown that, where it has swung here and there between videos. It always seems to land on Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States, breaking the barrier, becoming the first African-American woman as president, the first female president to serve as president of the United States. But let's move on to Pennsylvania, because that's also a state that matters, and its determination of whether or not this is a comfortable victory or this is a close victory. Again, what did Harris need to do to win? Literally, and we'll go through some scenarios because we're going to have a little bit of time, and I want to talk some scenarios of where Trump needs to do to potentially win. My final call for Pennsylvania. The early vote is massive for the Democrats. They have a huge buffer, and it's where they want it to be. It's about 400,000 votes just from Democrat to Republican, and we don't know what that independent volume is, whether that's mostly Democrat or not. I believe it would be mostly Democrat. This is huge. Democrats have a 400,000 plus vote margin right here. That's huge. That is massive. That should be big warning bells to Republicans in the state of Pennsylvania. The polls have been consistent here. Again, when the Republican pollsters flooded the zone, the averages shifted a little bit. However, Marist, again, very, very highly rated pollster, had Harris up by 3. I, too, believe Kamala Harris will hold the last Rust Belt state, and Kamala Harris will win the presidential election with 292 the 246 electoral votes. This is the final map that I have right here. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Nevada to Kamala Harris, Georgia, Iowa to Donald Trump, and if you want to count Arizona, you can, but again, I shifted Arizona to tilt to lean, and I moved Iowa to tilt. I have moved North Carolina. I did an emergency video afterwards that I moved North Carolina in. It's my home state. Right now, I believe Kamala Harris is going to win in my home state of North Carolina. Once again, this isn't a biased map. I don't want people to think that this is the case that I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make a case based off numbers, based off early vote data, based off of just what I truly believe is going to happen, because I want to be right. And I mean, again, I can be wrong. I would love to be right here. For one, it makes me look good that I'm right. But again, it's just so hard to predict these things. We have to go based off of the numbers, off the data, off of what we see, and before we count the votes. And that's what matters. Now we're going to transition real quick because we haven't talked about paths. So this is my final map, my final call. Saying it now, then we're going to transition just to the paths because I'm making this a two-part video. First part right here. This is the, you know what? Yes, this is the final call map. I'm going to make a separate video. So if you want to watch the final call, this is it, but I don't want to confuse anybody. So I'm going to make a second video and talk about paths the candidates have. That'll be a short video. But this is it. My final call, my final prediction. Kamala Harris with 292 electoral votes, Donald Trump with 246, and I'm going to leave you with this. Make sure you vote. Vote, 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 because that is what a constitutional republic allows us as Americans to do. Vote your conscience, and just always remember, this is a right that you have that not many in this world possess. Take advantage of it, go vote, and we will wait for Tuesday, this Tuesday, 3 days, to see who will become the next president of the United States.